Okay, folks, let us get started. And as people trickle in, we can just let them in. So I'm super excited to announce our special guest on today's Privacy Exchange Community Professional Show and Tell show, Zach Kilhoffer. So today we're going to be talking about the biggest challenges that privacy engineers face with existing standards, how legal teams and privacy engineers can work best together, and the connection between privacy engineering and AI governance, the hottest topics out there. So a little bit about Zach. He is a tech policy researcher and PhD candidate at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign in information sciences. He has done a lot of research that has made big impacts, particularly in Europe, where his research on the impacts of algorithmic job quality for gig workers was instrumental in the digital platform regulation in the EU. So if you want to know more about that, definitely ask him in the Q&A session. I'm curious to know more about that too. But in terms of this first session, we're going to be focusing on privacy engineering to better understand how professionals are addressing technical, legal, and ethical responsibilities of privacy in the real world, kind of what Corey was talking about when we first started here. Okay, so first we'll do about 10-15 minutes of me and Zach having a chit chat, and then we'll open it up to audience Q&A. The first part of this will be recorded, and as soon as we switch to Q&A, we will turn that off, so feel free to ask the questions you want freely. As a reminder, all of the information that we share in today's session is for informational and educational purposes only, and none of this is legal advice. You're not a lawyer anyway, and neither am I. So if you need legal help, contact your own attorney. Okay, with that all said, Zach, are you ready to hop in?
I am. Thank you for the super nice introduction, Mary.
All right. Okay, my first question for you is, you've talked to a lot of privacy engineers, obviously, in your research. What sort of problems do you see coming up most frequently? What are the biggest challenges in that profession? And like, how do you move forward with that?
Yeah, no, okay, so first, good question. Second, it's really difficult to put privacy engineers into any sort of meaningful box because when we talk about privacy engineering, that can be someone who's within their team and sort of working just with the devs and doing the technical side of privacy. And that can mean someone who's more managing the organizational kind of level. And so the reality is that people who do privacy engineering, they do a whole lot of vastly different things, and the challenges look like that. At the sort of higher level, what it often looks like is that legal might be running the show, and they sort of don't feel like they're in a position to affect organizational change because they're sort of just trying to keep up with the kind of tasks that they're given by legal, who sort of has the ear of management, right? So that's one fairly common organizational context challenge that I hear. Um, I think that, as you mentioned, the particular focus of our study was about how these folks use standards. And I think one of the challenges with being a privacy engineer is this dizzying flood of possible information and guides and policies that you might be able to implement and things that you can do to improve the privacy culture of your organization, right? I really quickly found out that the word standard means really different things for a lot of different people. I sort of came into this with the understanding of privacy standards as like this industry management, risk management system standards, like the big ISO ones, 27001 or the quality management standard, these other ones, right? But other ones, what we do think of as standards as well, are more like a list of principles, and it's more like it's not so much an implementable series of checklists at any level. It's something that you sort of take an oath that we're upholding the fair use of data or something like this, right? I mean, these sort of more abstract things, as well as some ones that are nicer frameworks, but still are principles, not specifics, right? So I think that the way that they face challenges with regard to that looks very different depending on where they fall within this organization and the kind of overall support level that they have. How much are they having to like drag the rest of the team kicking and screaming to get to their privacy goals, right?
Totally. It's so funny you say that it's more like principles because it's true. There aren't checklists. I know there are some folks on this call who are working to improve that. But yeah, right now it is not as clearly defined as some of the bigger standards bodies like the ISO that you mentioned. Um, I also have to agree with you. The privacy engineers I've talked to have struggled with legal departments where it's like, here's a checklist instead of it being like a more free-flowing relationship. So I'm kind of curious. You've spent a lot of time talking about these types of organizational dynamics, and like that liaison role. So can you tell us like how senior privacy engineers are that liaison between both the legal team and then the engineering team? Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. I think that I think there's a certain level of complexity that you can reach, at which point there will become a need for some sort of liaison role between your dedicated team of legal and your dedicated sort of team of engineering or product or whatever you call them, right? And so again, this is also premised on a certain like federated organizational structure, of which might be typical for like larger companies, big tech sort of things. Um, so there's this dynamic that happens, and this is like super simplifying things, but let's assume that it's reasonable enough for the moment. So starting at management, you have these organizational goals that are sort of given down to the rest of the teams, right? And then based on those organizational goals, the legal team puts out their sort of legal requirements, legal goals, right? And so then the legal team says, okay, they go to the engineering team and sort of say that, okay, now we need to comply with GDPR and we're doing this thing with this new product in here. So make this happen. Then the engineers say, I have no idea what you're talking about. You want me to do what? And the engineers in the legal start to have a struggle over what the lawyer would tell them to do for compliance and what is actually required at the technical level to do the compliance, right? And so, and again, this is sort of hinting that privacy engineers have very different roles. Some of them are those people who are implementing the technical things, being told by some person fulfilling a liaison role. And other times, a privacy engineer or a head privacy engineer, chief privacy engineer is going to be the one who takes those legal requirements and manages to communicate it to the engineering or product team in a way that makes sense to them and that it actually gets done. Because if you don't have that kind of liaison role, then you have this impasse, this communication impasse. That you have the team that speaks the legal language and understands the legal concepts, and you have the inverse, which is the engineering guys and women who are kind of down in the basement. They know how to code and they're geniuses at that, but they're not geniuses when it comes to interpreting some legal passage that was thrown their way, right?
Neat. This is really interesting. I also hear a lot of people talk about the need for that kind of like technical translation needing to happen at the regulatory level. So, or like when laws are actually written, it would be great if there were privacy engineers who'd be like, all right, wait, hold the phone. How are we actually going to put that in practice? It sounds great. The words sound good, but how are we technically going to implement that? And what would
Mm-hmm.
be really awesome is there was like a two-way bi-directional flow there. It seems like what I'm hearing from you is mostly like rolls down from management or legal down to the engineers, and there's not that like bi-directional, hey, here's the best way to do this. Um, okay, I have two more questions for you, and then we'll open it up
Yeah.
to audience Q&A. So you started to work on AI governance a bit in your role, and I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
curious, this is a new era for a lot of privacy professionals, whether you're privacy legal, privacy engineering, AI governance is seeping into our world. So I'm curious what sort of connections you're starting to see from a privacy engineering standpoint as it relates to AI governance.
Yeah. So my background is actually not privacy engineering, even privacy or even computer science. It's political science. So I have a bachelor's and master's in international relations, did a lot of poli-sci stuff. Um, so I do think about the sort of broader governance stuff that has to happen, right? Um, but so how do you understand some big, crazy multidisciplinary topic like AI governance? And it is big and crazy multidisciplinary, right? Like the number of unique domains and disciplines, like it involves organizational management kind of stuff. It involves international relations. It involves political science. It involves like all kinds of law. It involves all kinds of ethics, and so on and so forth. I think that a lot of these sort of conceptual challenges with AI governance are very, very close matches to the field of privacy as a topic of research and as a practice, right? And so the challenges that we face in figuring out how to do privacy, how to implement the privacy in the real world, right? You have technical challenges, right? So I don't know, like what's the appropriate hashing algorithm we use or something, right? Then you have organizational challenges, which is, how do we make these necessary functions and people act together to get us closer to this goal, right? And then you have, ethical challenges, like what does it mean to use data fairly? And then, so you have this broad array of things that make privacy hard and difficult and interesting as a privacy engineer, right? And I think that these questions of, well, you have a domain that's got technical challenges, organizational, legal challenges, and ethical challenges, right? Those four equally apply in my mind to privacy, the field of privacy, and to AI governance. I think as a broader level, I would see that most likely AI governance is going to sort of develop over the next few years in a similar way that the privacy field has, which subsequently came more or less after the security or cybersecurity field. It became sort of more recognized that we need to do this and do this right, became more formalized, became more legalized, became better standardized. And now you have this system for security where you have very universally recognized standards that are almost a price of doing business. You need to get this certification. You have an independent way of verifying compliance with these frameworks and standards, right? I think that ultimately we're going to get there with AI governance. There's a big step from the EU AI Act, and also the executive order from the Biden administration that basically commands NIST, and then the European equivalent sends Senelec to make a standard that makes AI governance possible, right? And so this is overall the trend towards formalization and standardization. That's where I see it going.
Yeah. Is that cat registered for this webinar?
He is. Yeah. So he's a lover boy.
So cute.
His name is Theodore Roosevelt. His brother is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but we call him Teddy, and he's the most dog-like cat I've ever met.
Oh my God, so cute. I love that your cats showed up on our chat here. I know I
Yes.
totally agree with you. It was so interesting. I recently went through an AI governance training program, and it was like, okay, guys, the organizational part, the ethics part, the technical part, we weren't even agreeing on the basics, the fundamentals. Like, what do you mean when you say that? Oh, I had a different idea in mind. So I agree the standards need to develop, but to your point, hopefully we've learned enough lessons from the security world and the privacy world that the AI governance world won't be as big of a lift. Okay, one final question, then we'll open it up. I would like to know about the privacy engineering survey that you are conducting. Specifically, who is it for and what is this survey about? And feel free to put it in our group here if there are anyone you'd like to take the survey.
Yeah, so essentially, this research that I just kind of described, right? I think it was a really good start. I think that, we got some really positive attention at PEPR and at IWPE. But it wasn't a huge sample. It was 14 really generous people with their time. So, 14 hours of text to go through. And so this was, if you get a slightly higher N via a survey and so on, then all of a sudden you can be a bit more confident about what you're observing. That's not just because of the people that you recruited, but it's actually more about privacy engineers per se, right? So that's what we're doing. We've got a survey which is on Qualtrics. It takes most people about 15, 20 minutes to do. And it would be monumentally incredible if you could help me as a privacy engineer by doing this. For the moment, it's only for people based in the US, but we're working on an IRB amendment, which would also let us recruit people from the EU. So yeah, I think that it's also going to be interesting. It's a pretty well assembled one. I worked with some privacy engineers to make sure that the questions are kind of logical and they're not going to be ridiculous. So we put time into this, and if you could just put a little bit of time into it for me, then I'll be able to get my dissertation done by this December, and then you'll have my eternal gratitude. You can also opt for a drawing if you would, if you need a little incentive or you like to, play the odds, you can just, we give you the option to give us an email, and if your name is drawn, then we are going to send you a $300 gift card as a huge thank you. So that is what it's about. It's about understanding how confident are we really about what privacy engineers are doing and the way they're using standards, and how often really do they get to that point, and how are they really working between teams? These are the kind of questions that we're asking to get some better certainty about the profession.
Huzzah. And I think Ryan dropped it in. Yes, he did. So folks, if that is of interest to you, please pick up that link in the chat, or if you've got friends who are privacy engineers that you could share that with, please spread the message far and wide. All right, Ryan, may we please turn off the recording so that